Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have webinar number 2 of this session of Reinvention Revolution. We have we have had a little bit of wait because we had some people logging in, but now off we go. We changed a little bit, a couple of things here, so you notice that the presentation has changed a little bit, and that's because of all the feedback that we've been getting from you who have been on webinar number 1. All right, so thank you very much for that. It's great when we get some positive feedback, but it's also great when we get feedback that helps us improve. A little bit about me, and I'm not going to go too much about that. I think I did that last week, but I'm founder of Reinvention Revolution, and the idea of this endeavor is that it is a school for the future. So if we're going to live a 100-year life, we want to make sure that we reinvent ourselves constantly, that we are able to do that, and that we become resourceful enough to reinvent ourselves in the face of the evolving technology, right? There is a lot of technology that is emerging today that is becoming dangerous. There's 75 million jobs that will disappear over the next 5 years. And that's essentially because of technology. And at the same time, there will be 138 million jobs that will be created. So the net effect is positive, but obviously we need to be prepared. We need to understand what are some of the things that it takes for us to be a part of that technology advancement, right? So my job in this is to help you become ready for that and to give you reinvention as a skill, right? I'm a board member and advisor in a couple of companies, and I do mentoring and coaching as well as part of my daily activities. I used to be a CEO of a $700 million operation here in Mexico for Mexico and Central America. And last year, I decided I wanted something else. I wanted to reinvent myself. And so I did. And here we are, right? So I'm now trying to give you a little bit of a taste of what it is that Reinvention Revolution can do for you, but also help you with what you can do for yourself. What is reinvention, right? Last week there were some questions about that. Reinvention is getting you ready, is the ability for you to look into the future and say, I want to be a part of it, right? And I have that skill. I know how to do it. The problem with many people is that they look at their lives and they see, okay, there are these elements of things that I don't like about it. And at the same time, they're not able to take action, right? So Reinvention Revolution is about taking action, is about, going live on video for a group of people who have similar interests, right? It is about writing something. It is about generating content. It is about learning about something, right? How do you learn about learning? So after a while, reinvention has to become your unfair advantage, right? Your unfair advantage puts you ahead of everybody else. In a world that is being disrupted constantly, where the ability to develop technologies and implement those technologies is outpacing your ability to learn, then you need to be able to reinvent yourself, right? Some of my customers say, I'm not good with technology, then what do I do, right? Not being good with technology is like saying, I'm not good with the radio or I'm not good with the TV, right? Those are technologies that emerged, they became part of our lives, and the ability to understand and talk about those, but also act on them is increasingly important, right? And that's not going to change. That's only going to continue becoming more and more important as we develop. So I think my mission is to help you become a better version of yourself by not being afraid, right? By not looking at the challenges ahead of you and thinking they're too much for me, right? Because they're not. The reality is that you can get out of something, get something else, start something, learn something, and then grow as a process rather than become entangled in a web of anxiety that damage you eventually. So what we talked about last week was let's look into the things that are important in our lives. How do we rate ourselves in those things, and what are some of the things that we need to change, right? So you've built a case for change that day, right? It's a very simple one, but one that is realistic, right? Because it comes from inside of you. The, the minute you have that need for change, right? You need to understand that something is happening, right, in your mind that needs to trigger something else, right? It needs to trigger action. So now what? What do you do with it? Right? That's the question that we will answer today, right? And while we answer that question, I would like to share a concept with you that I think is extremely important. And that concept has to do with the dichotomy of fear and pleasure, right? What is that? Um, the part of the brain that controls fear and pleasure, it's the same, is the amygdala, right? So the question here is, don't I control my own thinking? Am I good at it? Am I not good enough that I'm not able to control my thinking? And the reality is that uh, those elements, they happen in the same place. So what you have today when you wanna eat a donut and that thinking goes from the amygdala, right? So I will have the pleasure, but I'm going to gain weight. So what do I want? So which of those are more powerful, right? And and when used correctly, this dichotomy is actually extremely powerful because it gives you reasoning to move forward. But you need to understand that that dichotomy is there. You need to understand that that amygdala is triggering uh, actions and reactions on you. And how do you do that? The most important thing is that you are aware, okay, that this exists. The second thing is that there is a part of your brain which is the prefrontal cortex. That part of your brain is what dictates what you actively do. So your active reactions. So you understand what you're doing is happening in the front of your brain, in the prefrontal cortex, right? Now, the connection of those elements is extremely important. You will only act on the things that you realize are important and that you see, okay, there is a reasoning why I need to do that. If you don't act on those, right, it's because you're more afraid than the pleasure that that's going to give. That's a very important concept, right? And you need to grasp that because otherwise, what's going to happen is that there's going to be a conflict, right, between fear and pleasure. They're parts of the same element, right? And they're pushing each other. And then in the process, they're building a wall that is very difficult to cross. We're in essence, we're afraid of things that can hurt us, right? Most of the things that don't happen in our lives is because we are afraid, right? We know there is a pleasure on the other side. We know there's something good on the other side, but the focus is not aligned, right? So we end up not having that pleasure because on the other side, there is a reaction that impedes us, right? That forces us otherwise. So how do you see that, right? I think a good way to see is essentially when you're a kid and you want to do something, right? So you want to roll over, but you're afraid because somebody told you you're going to get hurt, right? And that voice that you're going to get hurt keeps growing and growing and growing. So, what do you do with it, right? What are the main elements that help you in that process, and what what do you need to do really? So, there are a couple of things, but the main element here is that the conjunction of those two things, the fear and the pleasure, they will, in a way, also protect you, right? Because the reason why you're afraid is because you don't want to get hurt. So it's extremely important that when you're looking at those two elements, right, that you're essentially able to determine, okay, we we don't want to let fear take over, right? Because you want to grow, you want to evolve, you want better things for yourself. You want to experience the pleasure that comes from having a customer, from doing something that you thought it was not possible, right? and and if you're only fearful that, okay, I am not going to do this, or I am not going to actively dedicate the time to deal with that fear, okay, uh, then you're going to have a situation where those two forces, they continue to conflict in your head, they generate anxiety, and you don't move forward, right? You continue to live a life of I wish I would. Okay. uh, I don't want this to sound too simplistic, uh, but it's really about allowing yourself to reflect, right? And I really we wrote something last week about reflection and the power of that reflection to essentially create the necessary energy for you to break that wall. Well, that wall is there, right? It's not going to disappear by itself. So you need to understand the fear. You need to understand the pleasure that it will generate. And then you need to determine, okay, how do I overcome this side so that I get to the other side? That's not easy, right? And it takes work. And the work here is not physical, it is mental work. It is getting you to sit down and look at how you can model your future, right? And it starts with one, two, 3 points. And it starts with, what am I going to do today? That's why last week was so important, because last week, when we talked about, okay, we need to take action on a couple of these things in our lives. And maybe one of them is going to be, I need to learn something that's going to help me move forward in my career. I need to learn something that's going to help me understand a concept I don't know. I need to learn about, do you see the 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 pattern? Fear comes from the unknown, right? So the more you can think and act about that, the easier it's going to be for you to get to the other side. And what's in the other side, it's actually even cooler than what you think, because beyond the pleasure, the ability to do something will propel you forward even more. And why is that? Because usually in that process of understanding the fears that you have, understanding how they impact you, understanding what are some of the things that you need to do, you find really bits and pieces of self awareness. Okay, that self-awareness is extremely important. The importance of that has to do with, it's the trigger for the brilliance that you're looking for. So just recapping this part, because I think it's really important. We all have those two elements residing in the exactly same place in our brain, right? Inside the amygdala, you have fear and you have pleasure. You have the ability to look at both of them, understand what each one of them are, and then start putting yourself the one, two, three things that you can do. In that process, as you go forward, you will find self-awareness. And are you going to find yourself and reach nirvana? No. And why is that? Well, because you're a complex being, right? You have various elements, and you saw that last week, right? That you have different elements that will form you, but you will start understanding what makes you move in one part, what makes you move in another part, what makes you move in a third part. So it's for you now, by sitting down, putting the process in motion, right? And then doing something with the results of that process, you will know a little bit more about yourself and about what moves you. All right? So, key. Why is that important? Here we go. We always talk about finding our passion, right? As if that passion is something that um, happens within our hearts. Well, actually, passions, they are formed, right? And if you understand the process of forming those things that you're passionate about, then it becomes a lot easier for you to grasp what it is exactly that you need to do, right? So the model that I like to use is a three-step model, and by exercising in each one of them, you will understand, okay, so these are the things that I need to be focused on, right? The two things that you see here, the drivers and motivators, they're the starting point for this. Um, this whole exercise with fear and pleasure is extremely important, because when you look at how your passions are formed, you need to have an understanding of what it is that drives you. Okay, so that's why that self-awareness is so critical. The first thing about drivers is that they're internal, right? They're part of your upbringing. That upbringing is all the experiences that have happened in your life, good and bad. They're helping you form them, right? uh, you you know what the right things are that come from inside, right? But those are not your passions. Those are the shapes that form your character, the things that will allow you to give the first step. So when you look back in fear and pleasure, a lot of the fears that we have is there because we've been told so, right? So don't try this. This is too dangerous. You're gonna hurt yourself. Or don't do that because you're not good at it. You're gonna fail. You're not gonna succeed. So if if we do not see past that, then we don't move, right? And that's where the motivators they come in. The motivators, they're external, right? They're knowledge and concepts that are being brought for us externally, right? So it's the people you spend time with, is the books you read, the things you watch, but also the rewards that you get from doing those things. Um, and I like the example of work, right? Because we have this idea that motivated employees are going to do a little bit more, right? They go the extra mile. And it's true. If you're motivated to go beyond what you see in front of you here, um, you will eventually go the extra mile. Now, what is important is that this is fueled by your drivers, right? This motivators, they're fueled by your drivers. So you need to have a grasp on the first one, and that understanding. And many times, because we're afraid to understand those drivers, we end up not being able to explore what motivates us, right? What are the external elements that will allow us to become better and go the extra mile? Um, this concept is quite interesting, and it's been used in companies all over the world for the last 50 years, right? So those things that come from the inside makes you better. How do you motivate yourself? What are some of the rewards that you're going to get in the process? And then the sum of both then lead into passion, right? True excellers, they're not motivated. They're obsessed. They're freaking obsessed about something, right? For them, carpe diem means success beyond reprieve. It means they're going to be carrying their hearts and minds out in the world because they know that's the only thing that puts them in a state flow, right? And what is that? The flow state is when you're working without realizing it's work, right? When you're doing something and you lose track of time, when you're so excited about something that it makes you shine and it helps inspire others, right? The passion goes beyond motivation, right? It's the sum of your own personal drivers, what you truly believe in, your values, then with an external reward system that you understand and you're able to essentially mold to what you want, and then gives you a reason to move forward no matter what. A good story from past weekend. I was working on some of the things that we're doing in Reinvention Revolution, and I was sitting in the computer, and one of my daughters was with me, and we were talking about things, and she was also working in a way, and it started becoming late, right? So it's 10 o'clock, and she's there. It's 11 o'clock, and she's there. It's midnight, and she's gone, right? Obviously, in this process, she just decided, okay, I'll sleep here anyway, and that's gonna be there. And after that, right, I realized that time disappeared. And time disappears in two ways, right? So the first is you're sleeping. So if you're having a trip and suddenly you decide, okay, I'm gonna sleep, that trip will be a lot faster, right? So it took an hour because, well, essentially the rest of it I was asleep. The second thing is that you're focused so much that the perception of time disappears, right? And so there I was with my daughter. She was working. It was quite cool because she was actually thinking about something that she wants to do, and she's 4. She's gonna turn 4 very soon. And at the same time, I was putting something together, some creative material, some copy, and prepare some contracts that we have to sign this week. And time disappeared, right? It went away. So I was like, okay, I need to savor this moment because I was just able to do some work in a state of flow, right? One of the things that I also learned about that passion, right, when it is entangles you, is that it's by and large focused on others, right? One of the things I love about this work with Reinvention Revolution is that I'm literally experimenting and giving back, right? Uh, I truly believe this is going to cause an impact beyond myself. Um, I think we're just scratching the surface in a massive technological transformation. So this is for me. This is for you. This is for our kids. This is for society at large to get better in understanding all these concepts and dealing with them. It's not for me, right? I mean, this is free. This is not going to be charged. Uh, but I I realized that in that very moment, okay, I'm happy here, right? I'm doing something that matters beyond myself, and I'm doing something that creates a positive traction with the people I love, and even with the people I don't know, right? I got lots of interesting tidbits last week from webinar number one from people I never heard about. So it's quite an amazing world in that sense. Okay, so by understanding how you go from drivers to passion, okay, you are able to see, okay, where do we go, and what are some of the things that are worthwhile investing the time. Why am I saying this? Because for most of us, doing something that makes us passionate and driven allows us to go into that state of flow. It will give us the ability to create something that we did not know it was possible. And when it comes to learning something, okay, you're only going to put the effort if there is zero friction, right? And the only way you're going to get little to no friction is to get into that state of flow. So that's the reason why I wanted to bring this concept forward, because understanding your passion is really understanding oneself, understanding what motivates us from the outside, and then being able to craft, okay, these are the things that I'm passionate about. I am going to create a routine. I am going to push myself to learn that and to do that thing. And that is going to give me the fulfillment that I'm looking for. The worst thing that can happen, and it happens all the time, and you see that all the time, is successful people who do not feel fulfilled, right? Who have something that they say, I'm sorry, I don't, I would rather do something else, right? And and a lot of people say, well, this is a fact of life, right? It's a matter of life. No, it's not, because the minute you understand what are some of the things that you're passionate about and focus on those, then that feeling diminishes, right? It disappears. Okay. Cool. So this is what I wanted to share with you. I have a little bit more on what's next, right? We Reinvention Revolution is now coming together. So a couple of the things that we are doing, we're building a portfolio of activities. I think these webinars, they will continue. We're having the first five now. We are focused on what we call the bionic operating system, and that's really to help you start putting technology in a better way in your life, right? Having it work for you, not against you, right? We will be giving cool tips. I hope you like the tips that you see here, and we will focus on some general things that we believe will be helpful for you as you progress in this process of transformation. The next thing is the mentoring. It's really education, because I'm helping you, and then maybe someone else in the team may be also helping you in creating that bionic OS for yourself, and then kind of unlocking some of the secrets of this personal reinvention that we talked about. It does touch on specific points, right? And it's crafted for you. So we have a method, we have a process, but ideally this is for you. Okay. And the last thing is the online or in-person mastermind, right? That we're going to launch next year. And what we really want with this is to start creating a network of like-minded people who will support each other and then who will help you get to that next level, right? So if you want to have a side gig, how do you do that? What are the steps? What are the tools that you need to bring? What are the things that are included in creating that tool? How do I create my brand? Should I do it myself? Should I hire someone else? How do I bring this personal reinvention to the next level? All these things, they're meant for one thing only, right? To give you the resources for you to be able to reinvent yourself, right? There's nothing more important than this. As we progress and as we evolve, we will see that um, technology is going to start taking over many of our jobs. Being human is going to have a different meaning, and that meaning is how do we become creative beyond what you thought it was possible? How do you focus on your passions? How more than you thought it was possible? How do you allow yourself to explore and experiment? Right? You have so much free content today. How do you drive that? How do you use that to your advantage? Right? So what we want is to help you in that journey. Okay? So this is all for today. I wish you enjoyed. If you're not with us here today live, I just want to make sure that we're going to have this uploaded on YouTube for those of you who register, and then we'll be sharing as well a map that's called the Flow State Map, and what that is about is a tool for you to understand, okay, how do I get into that state and how do I know I'm there? Because by knowing you're there, you're allowing yourself to savor that moment and have that win, saying, okay, I got this. All right. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure to speak with you today. I just want to give a few seconds to see if there is any question on the chat. So let me just check that. Um, Anybody? No? All right. So thank you very much. And I'll talk to you next week. All right. Or maybe I'll talk to you before that. We may have a few surprises now in terms of content that we'll be delivering between this week and next week. All right. Thank you very much. See you soon. Bye.